Whew. I am a few hours removed from seeing Dune Part 2, and man, that was incredible. Hey yo, what's good? Welcome to The Gist, with me, Jared. Dune Part 2 is here. The sci-fi epic of Paul Atreides continues. Will he fulfill the prophecies as bringer of prosperity or courier of destruction?
We gave them something to hope for.
That's not hope! May thy knife chip and shatter.
For my spoiler-free review, I've got to say, Dune Part 2 was purely epic. The scale of this movie on the IMAX screen is absolutely incredible. If you're at all interested, definitely go see this on the biggest screen possible. The CGI and cinematography were amazing. The worlds we traveled to are quite jaw-dropping. Everything looked and felt so real. I am really astonished with how immersive this movie was. The 2-hour and 46-minute runtime will be a detractor for some folks, but for me, I was buckled in and engaged the entire time. There are only a handful of moments where the story slowed down a bit, but I found those helpful to better understand the characters and the narrative as it was being developed. Admittedly, there is a lot of information to keep track of with Dune Part 2. You have to be ready to pay attention, otherwise you could easily get lost in this movie. Additionally, it'd be pretty challenging to come into this movie if you haven't seen the first installment that released in 2021. This movie picks up right where the first one left off. Dune Part 1 does a lot of the work into building the foundation of the political and religious nature of this story. The themes of religion, politics, and power are at the core of the Dune story, and for me, is the most intriguing part. I loved how the story showcases the power and influence of the Sisterhood of the Bene Gesserit. The kind of supernatural religious cult pulling the strings of powerful leaders and groups in order to satisfy their own agenda. Ooh, it's so juicy and captivating. I also really enjoyed seeing the differences in the Fremen people, those who believe in the prophecy and those who see it as Bene Gesserit propaganda. I even found myself pondering the complexities of prophecy versus confirmation bias rooted in indoctrination. Whether you're a religious person or not, the faith aspect of the story is fascinating, especially if you relate it to our world today. And then we have the storyline of the houses gunning for the throne, the seat to rule the cosmos. You've got the Atreides line, the Fremen, the Harkonnens, the Emperor's Imperium, all playing at the game for ultimate power. And seeing their decisions and machinations unfold was awesome. The performances all around were great. Whether it was our main characters or those who got minimal screen time, I really enjoyed all the performances we saw. Even though what we got was solid, this is the kind of movie that makes me want more. I find the story of Part 1 and Part 2 so intriguing. I want more of the history and motivations of all the different power players. When it comes to this sequel, I would have appreciated a bit more from the Imperium and the Harkonnens. Even though Austin Butler's Fade Routha definitely conveyed the sadistic sociopath they were going for, I would have preferred a few more scenes showcasing him as a serious threat to Paul Atreides. In light of how Fade Routha was introduced, I didn't get a sense of dread or threat from him. His fight scene at the end, though, was still quite good. Understandably, it's kind of hard to ask for more when the movie was already really close to hitting 3 hours. Again, what we got was enough to hit the narrative points they were going for with this sequel. I like the development of Paul Atreides as well. We see him endear himself to the Fremen people, becoming the Messiah that many believe him to be. And what we get from him at the end, I'm all here for it. It is a pretty significant jump in terms of his character, so I can understand if you find it hard to believe. But for me, I found the plot device and that plot point convincing enough for his character. Outside of the runtime, the only other hurdle with this kind of movie would be if you're not really into sci-fi. The space opera grand scale of Dune Part 2 is pure science fiction. But if that's not your cup of tea, I get it. But man, you're really missing out on something awesome. And that's the gist to my spoiler-free review of Dune Part 2. This movie is a marvel from a visual standpoint, and the narrative is nothing to scoff at either. Dune Part 2 is long, and the story can be a bit hard to follow due to the sheer volume of characters, groups, and motivations at play. But if you can find the time to buckle in and focus for a 3-hour movie, I believe you'd be well pleased with Dune Part 2. What did you think of Dune Part 2? What aspect of the story did you find most intriguing? Are you as excited for Part 3 as me? Hit me up! Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. I'll catch you next time on The Gist.